What is Gnosticism? It is, as I understand it, Christianity before Arianism and Trinitarianism. What are the last two doctrines that I've mentioned? Arianism, as I understand it, is the belief that Jesus is divine. Trinitarianism is the belief that Jesus is the co-equal of the God of Israel and the Holy Spirit. So what is Gnosticism? I am saying that Gnosticism is Christianity before it was made into a doctrine. Constantine the Great knew he had to adopt a different religion to the failing imperial cult. And Christianity was the biggest idea around at the time. But what was Gnosticism? It was basically a lot of people selling snake oil and putting the branding of Jesus on whatever they were trying to sell, and I suppose it must have worked to a greater or lesser extent. But this was clearly not enough to be made into a state religion, and that was why Constantine called the Christian bishops to come to Nicaea to agree to a doctrine so that he could adopt it as his new Roman religion. But they couldn't even do that. There was schism. The Trinitarians disagreed with the Arians. The Arians won the day briefly when Constantine's son adopted it, and after he died, Arianism was abandoned for Trinitarianism. So what is this new thing I'm talking about called Neo-Gnosticism? This is something I discovered today, really. It's that new. Basically, there's a bunch of Christians who are, not to put too fine a point on it, creating their own religion. They would regard themselves as intellectuals in some way, talented in literature, in philosophy, well, or they have some knowledge of these things anyway, and they have a kind of Christianity that they promote, and nobody says, no, this is heresy, you can't do this, and really nobody cares. Nobody cares what they say. So you have different people claiming Christianity to be this, that, or the other, and you have no response from the Anglican Church, who, I guess, or whatever churches they are, these people claim to be from. Nobody disagrees with them, and they let their imaginations run away to create all kinds of ideas about Jesus. And it doesn't really matter what it says, because it's not really a religion for them. It is just a bunch of people telling stories. And that's enough. In religions, you have people, they would have rituals, they would have sacraments, they would have, basically people doing stuff, such as the Eucharist, communion, whatever it is that different people of different religions would do. And it seems that the act of their ritual practice is basically to go online and talk about Christianity in a way that would be heretical to somebody taking it seriously, but it doesn't really matter. It's just, quasi-Christian people getting together to tell each other what they think of Christianity, and nobody objects because nobody really cares, and this is their religious practice. For some, there's money to be made in academia. You can write books, maybe write songs, and sell a dream of off-grid living. But this does not amount to a religion. And those who claim that it is Christianity are deceiving themselves as well as others. But since nobody takes them seriously, nobody really cares. But the point is, religion has a genuine social purpose, and it is not the purpose that these people use it for, which is to, have their little discussions about, different subjects, and there is some kind of political point to it, and I think it's just an assertion of being middle class, and having artistic and literary pretensions, but there is no fundamental morality about it, because there is no I can't say the word now, theological coherence. And if you don't have theological, goodness, I've forgotten how to pronounce the word. Theology, theological, that's the word I'm trying to say. Theological dimensions of Christianity. Well, there's nothing to it really. You just have to believe and not question it, because when it was working properly in the Middle Ages, you couldn't question it, and the whole idea was that you weren't supposed to question it. And if you did, there would be terrible consequences of being accused of heresy and blasphemy and execution, or being burnt at the stake. And for Westerners, they've never really understood the birth and bloody history of Christianity, and because religion is really it's a big idea, and people think it can save them. Governments do, individuals do, even those who claim to be atheist want to impose they want to impose belief systems on others. And if they control the media, then of course it is easy for them to say this and to say that and silence people who disagree with them. But I've noticed over the years that there's a certain pattern of behavior for people who want to impose their belief systems on others, and obviously they don't want to be challenged. And there are ways of dealing with people who challenge you. So you can ignore them, you can demonize them, and you can accept their challenge and argue with them. Ignore, demonize, or engage. Well, obviously the most honourable approach would be to engage with people if you really believe, really believe in what you believe in, what you claim to believe in, then you would take on all comers. And this is what I do. I mean, I have to do that in order to, well, get to the top of whatever intellectual hierarchy there is. But all that happens is that I go round and round in circles. So I may have a few leads here and there. I may have found a few good people here and there, but they're not, as far as I know, top people who are prepared to risk anything. I guess the most will do is agree with me and silently support me from the sidelines. There are some who try and I do follow advice from time to time, and the advice that I get is that I should be nicer to Christians, and it's not that I want to be nasty to them. I think it's absolutely necessary to genuinely consider how God would regard these people who claim to be Christians but who don't care that they are guilty of idolatry and blasphemy. And really the picture is quite alarming. So if you were to hypothesize that God exists and intends to punish those who break his laws, then who would he punish? I mean, obviously he would be punishing the people who most transgress his laws, but who would be the people who most transgress his laws? And actually it's really very easy to work it out because of the Noahide laws. And for this list of 7, we must thank rabbis. And the 7 Noahide laws overlap with the 10 commandments in the prohibition of idolatry and blasphemy. And I suppose that doesn't go on and on and on about the same subject to the extent of being accused of being monomaniacal, because I think I have the answer, and I just want somebody to at least understand what I'm trying to say. And I suppose I have to acknowledge people who say, well, if you were nicer to these Christians, and maybe they'll give you a fair hearing. But I really don't think so. Why would Christians, if they were really atheists and nihilists, why would they engage with me? I mean, that's a bottom line, isn't it? Why would they engage with me? Because they wouldn't want to engage with somebody who is bent on questioning their beliefs. And if they were not even genuine beliefs, then of course they wouldn't want to be scrutinized about the genuineness of their beliefs. Excuse me a moment. Welcome, William Branch. I know you from somewhere, don't I? Where was I? I was talking about people who only pretend to believe. They pretend to be Christian in order to remain a member of a luxury belief. What is a luxury belief? It's a belief that most people do not hold. It's an esoteric belief that people only claim to hold in order to remain in a certain group. It's lifetime membership of being white and middle class, I suppose. I don't know what you mean, William Branch. I'm saying it was working properly. Christianity was working properly in the Middle Ages. Good times, there were lots of people being burnt at the stake. But people did care then about principles and yesterday I was reading up about scholasticism, which is which was operating in the Middle Ages. I don't pretend to know a great deal about it. But they did have a certain understanding of the universe and took their principles literally. William Branch says, I am on my own trajectory of maturing. Well, I hope I am getting better or moving closer towards fulfilling my potential. If you think of theogony, sounds painful, as correction instead of punishment. One sees this differently. So this is a new word that I have to look up. Theogony. The agony. Theogony. A genealogy of a group or system of gods. Well, there's only one God, isn't it? That's what we're supposed to believe, isn't it? Is theogony pantheon? What is the definition of theogony? Theogony. Right, it goes back to Greece. Theogony are either genealogy or Birth of the Gods is a poem by Hesiod, I hope I pronounced his name right, describing the origins of genealogies of the Greek gods, composed in whenever it is written in the epic dialogue of ancient Greece, ancient Greek. No, I didn't know about that. Um, so we know about the Titans and the Olympians. I mean, it actually makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? It was I'll think upon it a little bit more and stream about it, perhaps next time. But basically, the theogony of the ancient Greeks is this: that the Titans were, well, they were material gods, and then the Olympians, they were gods of abstract ideas. And well, the Zeus could be considered a kind of, well, I know he was known as the king of gods, but you can see how theogony was, well, the Greek pantheon, in a way, um, was working towards hierarchy. It is made up of hierarchies. William asks, is God more like a father correcting a beloved child or an evil vizier who executes final punishment? It could be either. Well, okay, not an evil. Okay, you're not supposed to think of the Abrahamic God as evil because, well, that's what you're supposed to do. I believe that all belief systems are totalitarian in that, you either subscribe to them and you're a Jew, Christian, Muslim, whatever, and or you're not. If you don't believe in the system, then you're not. You're not a communist. You're not a Nazi. You're not a fascist. You're not, a liberal. You're not, So you either believe in them or not. The only difference is that is how you deal with people who are not within your group. Are you going to be really, really mean to them, or are you going to be reasonable? And I guess if you're reasonable and tolerant, you might, in the end, attract more people than if you were really mean to them. So I don't know if William Branch. Well, okay, William Branch. You will have heard of the Book of Job, and of course, people will be. Well, even within the Bible, God is treated as, well, on the one hand, merciful, on the other hand, vengeful, and I suppose to reconcile the two, you would have to say that God is vengeful to those who deserve his vengeance and merciful to those who believe, who deserve his mercy. And but you are supposed to believe that he is merciful and fair, and will at some stage, either in this life or the next, give perfect justice. And if we don't think we have received justice, well, the story is in the process of working itself out. We think a lot of people think that God acted a long time ago and he's not really around, and that is the incorrect belief. I'm not saying he actually exists, but the whole point of a living God is that as long as humanity exists, we are supposed to think of him as living and in perfect control, as well as being perfectly moral. And this is really the key to understanding the universe. And you're going to be saying, well, how would I know? I can understand belief systems and theories, I guess, better than most other people can. It's really as simple as, well, if somebody says he loves you, then, he's not supposed to be beating you up. If somebody says they love you, they're not supposed to be, well, stabbing you in the front and the back. And if they do that, they must be lying or mad or stupid. Well, I'm so pleased that William Branch is here, because you are showing understanding of what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of Gnosticism in all kinds of religion. I mean, Taoism is, also a form of Gnosticism. It's basically saying, if you know the secret to, I don't know, eternal life or whatever, then you have it. But you have to, go on a quest and look for it and know the right people and, that sort of thing. And it is well known that the first emperor of China believed that eternal life was possible, or immortality. That's how he operated. The terracotta warriors and all that sort of thing. And I suppose if you think there is special revelation, if you think you're meant to find it, you think some people know it, then you will be looking for it. So in Buddhism, you're not really supposed to wonder what who you were in your previous life, and for very good reasons too, because you can upset yourself unnecessarily. You can waste a lot of time, going through all these sort of regression therapies and possibly be exploited by your regression therapist. And the advice is, don't even go there. You won't know for sure, and just forget about it. And that is obviously good advice. But people can't resist thinking, well, I could find, I don't know, the secret to perpetual motion, the elixir of youth, the holy grail, all these, mysterious things that are, archetypes, to quote Jung. And really, they're silly. They're silly because these beliefs make you vulnerable to exploitation by charlatans and snake oil salesmen and saleswomen. And also, ultra-Orthodox rabbis dispense with these tricks, these money-making schemes. Because if you think about it, Jewish theology is Jewish philosophy. It might just be a truism, of course, that suffering is punishment for sin. I suppose it could be, the whole system of laws, of divine laws, could have been cooked up, maybe, by a committee of humans who think, well, we seem to be repeating the mistakes of history. We never learn, or if we learned, we learnt it before we forget about it by the next generation. So we will we'll have a subject called history in schools in our country, and you think, well, what a clever idea. Well, that means that we will all know where we come from and avoid the mistakes of history. But these politicians, these governments, they want to change history. They want to emphasize certain people and certain events at the expense of others. And as we all know, history is written by the victor. But Jews, what do? They have their list of characters in the Torah that they keep going back to. Moses, all the prophets of God. And they're always going back to these stories and wondering what their prophets did wrong, how to avoid their mistakes. And so these dead prophets become living characters, almost like in a soap opera that you're required to examine again and again, and the motives of the characters, the characteristics of the characters, until they are almost internalized in the minds of people who attend all these sermons of these rabbis over many, many years. So when you think of all these different religions, forget the Eastern religions, but I'll briefly deal with the Eastern religions because people should be able to see that Buddhism was intended to be an improvement on Hinduism. And Hinduism, as some people have been pointing out, isn't really a proper, coherent religion. The British only gave Hinduism its name because after colonizing India, they wanted to be able to say, this is the religion of the peoples of the Indus Valley. And I think the story is that they asked these Indians what their religion was, and I think they all got different answers. Different Indians in the different parts of the Indus Valley would say that their religion, they would give different names. And I guess the British, getting tired of all this insufferable variety of names that these Indians would call their religion, and they were all slightly different. I imagine all these different temples would have, would be under different administrations and have different gods and different priesthoods, and of course they wouldn't agree. And there might be a few works of folklore like the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, but they didn't really give a coherent idea of the principles of Hinduism. And the Buddha did, he improved religion by saying, well, from now on, you're going to have, 4 Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and, whatever he did. He basically codified this idea of avoiding doing the things that would get you put in a worse life than the one you are currently in. But that's as far as it goes for the Eastern religions. We know that China disdains to identify itself as an adherent of any of these religions. China prides itself on its statecraft. It is a living thing. I guess they have the principle of uh, modernizing, I was going to say, well, always trying to govern their country in the best way possible. And of course, they don't always get it right, and they get invaded, and they have civil wars and revolutions. But the idea remains that, well, you have a country and you want to run it in the most efficient way possible, and this you do by using the law to control behavior, to encourage good behavior, to discourage bad behavior. And when the whole thing collapses, you have to choose the best moral system available. And sometimes you choose correctly and sometimes you don't. So that's the end of the Eastern religions. We now come to the Abrahamic religions, and I was talking about Jewish theology being Jewish philosophy. What is philosophy? Philosophy is love of wisdom, and obviously the study of philosophy should be about acquiring wisdom and even measuring wisdom. And this is the sort of thing I hope to discuss with philosophers, and to my great disappointment, they have no interest in discussing these things. I remember proposing to a philosopher that wisdom should be defined and measured and cultivated, and he was horrified. So we know really that philosophy in academia is hopelessly corrupt, and nobody is interested in having a philosophical dialogue about anything. They just want to push their snake oil on you, and they want to remain in what they think is their exclusive middle class club. They don't want the hoi polloi muscling in on. Not that I propose to muscle in on their esoteric groups, which really talk about nothing or just nonsense, time wasting nonsense. But they're happy, talking to others like themselves, thinking of themselves as being very clever, laughing at each other's jokes, having a soiree online or a salon online. But they really have no interest in promoting the national interest or deciding on difficult and dark areas of politics. They just want to have their middle class fun and invite each other to tea or dinner and keep it at that. They're not really interested in arriving at truth, debating truth, or solving any political problems. They're just not. Monotheism is harder than polytheism, says William Branch. Muslim forced Jews and Christians to be more monotheist. We all arose out of polytheism. Of course, I'm not going to quarrel with that. Well, if you think of monotheism as one-stop shopping, then you get the idea. It's only a logical progression, you have Main Street or the High Street in the UK, and in the old days you trotted off to the grocer's shop, and then you'd go to the fruiterers, and then the bakers, and then the butchers, and the hardware shop, baker, what else are fishmongers, wine merchant. It's that sort of thing. And then if somebody have a great idea, let's have a supermarket and sell all those things under one roof. What do you mean by CRC? William Branch says, being myself, I am a mere loose Abrahamic, not CRC. Calvinist? What does CRC mean? He says Job is based, but the context was extra biblical. I don't know what you mean by that. I'm afraid I don't get your references about Allah if reflexive. Don't envy the correction of the meanest people. Okay, well, nobody wants to be corrected. No, but like, you see, the whole idea of redemption is that you're supposed to think it's possible. You're supposed to think that just by doing things differently, you're going to save yourself. You know, it is that sort of idea, really. I don't know what you mean by human reciprocation. The East influence Western esoteric. I've studied a lot of Buddhism. Once you see it, is clearly akin to Eastern thought. I mean, I don't know if you know that the Orthodox Jews believe in reincarnation too. They talk about it a lot. Rabbi Misraki talks about it a lot. And I was a bit surprised about it. And then you think, and then you, I mean, if you understand Judaism as saying, well, you're allowed to do things. If there's no prohibition against it, then technically, if you're talking about the afterlife, it could take, well, three main forms that I can think of, which is you go to heaven, or you go to hell, or you have another life based on your performance in this life. To see paganism today, popular Hinduism has this well developed. To watch them is to see. Okay, well, we know Hinduism is the oldest religion, but it's uncodified and, well, not legalistic enough. Hasidic Orthodox Judaism is going back 500 years. It was very based 200 years ago. Okay. All this is really about following your principles. And nobody follows principles now because liberal democracy has basically reigned supreme for quite a while. And I guess everybody thought, well, their religion is below liberal democracy, because liberal democracy, well, liberalism anyway, says we're going to treat. Okay, liberalism is founded on the idea of freedom of belief, because liberalism was a rejection of Christianity. So liberalism was an antithesis of Christianity, because when Christianity was operating in these European Christian kingdoms, Gentiles who were subjects of their absolute monarchs enjoyed no freedom of belief. And what we know about the American and French Revolution, and really it was a rejection of the idea that any monarch would be able to tell you what you could or couldn't believe. But anyway, you can also understand why the monarchs felt that they had to get their subjects to believe in their religion, because if they didn't, you would have the situation of, all their subjects saying, I don't believe in Christianity, it's stupid. And then, of course, they'll say, well, I'm a Jew, and my God is going to get you for your idolatry. And the Muslims say the same thing, and so it wouldn't look good for Christian monarchs to allow their subjects freedom of belief. So this was enforced ruthlessly by the practice of heretic burning. Well, thank you for coming, Christine Ramsey. It's always a delight to have you here listening to my nonsensical ramblings, but I think you know what I mean. If I really were talking nonsense, like the kind of nonsense that I've been hearing on a few streams, well, then you wouldn't be coming back. Run-of-the-mill Chinese communism of a Messiah complex. Well, I don't know. I don't know of any other people. It's ridiculous. So many of these accusations. I'm not communist. Do I have a Messiah complex? I suppose I think I can save Western civilization. Now, what does that even mean? Let's say secular Quran were adopted tomorrow. Western civilization, as we know it, would have ended. So, I guess I wouldn't be saving Western civilization, but people will say, okay, we don't want to say Western civilization as we know it, do we? We hate it. Even white people born in this country hate it. And they know something's gone terribly wrong, and that's why they come here to, shoot the breeze with me. And I'm proposing a solution. You'll think it a bit newfangled, but there it is. I'm the only one proposing a solution, and I want to hear proper reasons for rejecting it, apart from, you don't like it and you don't want to, and I can't make you. I really don't think Americans can deny that they don't have an official religion, and I don't think they can deny that things are looking pretty scary for them, even with their First Amendment, and they should know that there's no point having, all these laws that are not going to be enforced either fairly or at all if these Americans can't trust their ruling classes, and they can't, and they don't know what to do about it. And I'm saying, well, even as an agnostic, I know that you have to invoke a higher power than the power that is currently oppressing you, and the power that is currently oppressing you for Americans and non-Americans is the global hegemon, that is the American empire. So who is higher? Who is higher than the global hegemon, that is the American empire? Well, God, of course, God, if you believe in that sort of thing. So, if you want God to save you from the oppression of your global hegemon, then you'd have to have to ask him, right? You have to ask him. You have to ask him to do it, and you have to ask him in the proper way. Yes, that's what you have to do. And how do you do it properly? And it's like, well, you have to go back to scripture and you have to find out, who he is or what he's supposed to be and what he told you to do and not to do. And, just go through the list and say, well, did I do what I did I do it? Okay, you didn't do it. And, so the solution to your sins of omission is to remedy the omission, and the remedy to your sins of commission is to cease the commission of those sins. It's very simple. And you have it codified. I mean, it's just so easy. So you've got the seven no-hide laws, and there are the 5 that most people would agree to, right? Laws against murder, laws against theft, laws against sexual immorality, laws against eating an animal while it's still alive, and the positive commandment to establish a court and legal system. This is all not going to be objected to by reasonable and honest people. It's only the prohibitions against idolatry and blasphemy. But even if you didn't believe in God, after what I just said about being seen to respect the national religion, you'd have to say, well, officially anyway, you're not allowed to worship other gods, because that would cause all kinds of difficulties for your government, unless you acknowledge that your gods are lower in status than the Abrahamic God. And this is basically the arrangement that has persisted for quite a while, really, because I think all these different religions under Western governments have more or less submitted to the hegemonic ideology of liberalism. So even Catholicism has submitted to liberalism, including Protestantism and all the other non-denominational branches of Christianity. But now that liberalism is failing, we clearly have to make other arrangements. And now I have to go back to the do I need to go back to the subject of Neo-Gnosticism? I guess I'm just basically saying that the bunch of people, middle class, academics with artistic and literary pretensions, who call themselves theologians and philosophers, basically selling their snake oil with the label of Jesus on their bottles of snake oil, and I guess they feel threatened by me. I mean, there was innocently trying to engage Michael Martin, whom I understood to be a philosopher, in a philosophical exchange about the nature of the soul. And so when I said, well, when he tweeted that the soul is a fragile thing, I couldn't resist responding by saying, the soul is supposed to be immortal. And then he just got rude. And then I realized why he was being rude, because he's associated with the woman who has gone out of her way to call me all kinds of names. She has likened me to Satan, suggested that I would push people off cliffs for fun, that I am a behemoth and a snake in the garden, when I have never engaged with her. And then she refused to engage with me, to withdraw her comments, or even to explain herself. So basically, that's the situation, and I suppose it's evidence of her, what shall I say, malice, inability to engage in an honest and rational way, cowardice even, because she's blocked me, and so has the channel Grail Country, and so has the Twitter account Grail Country, refused to engage with me. And all these people with their middle class, theological, what's the word? Intellectual pretensions. Theological and philosophical pretensions. These people have these theological and philosophical pretensions. They won't engage with me. And I suppose they hope I will go away. I'm afraid I can't really, because I have spotted a weakness. I've noticed that they basically talk nonsense. I mean, I knew before that the Trinity was morally and intellectually indefensible, and these people who want to claim to be Christian only do so for cultural and class reasons. And this is what it is fundamentally. They are snobs who don't give a damn about the national interest, as long as they can have their cosy little club of pretentious witterings and their cosy tea parties. They're not really interested in discussing philosophy. And therefore they are not fit for the purpose of, well, discussing anything at all. And they should make way for people who are, and stop lying about them. The British interpretation of Hinduism was biased. Americans remade Sri Lankan Buddhism. Neither are the same as the real thing. British American New Age. Yes, I understand. I know that Hollywood made a film called Little Buddha with, what's his name? Richard Gere, wasn't it? West promotes IQ over EQ, intellect over heart. Do they? This oppresses the feminine and the artistic. Well, you can't have your women running things, you know. Why don't you tell us what you know about Kabbalah? Okay, well, would you like to join me for a chat, William? Now-ish? Well, I feel that William understands me, and I'm grateful for that. Not many people understand what I'm talking about, no matter how clearly I seem to. Well, I mean, I think I'm reasonably clear about what I'm trying to say. I'm certainly clearer than the people I'm complaining about. Yes, the Victorians used to have pointless discussions about how many angels can dance with the head of a pin. I mean, there was no. Well, angels are supposed to be, what, our size, aren't they? Yeah. There's a reference to Jesus being an angel. So I guess angels are person-sized. Okay, CRC, Christian Reformed Church, Dutch Calvinist, all right. Now I know. Yes, well, if we are in error, we should desire correction. A breakdown in family because history is breaking us on the rack. Well, I mean, the whole idea of Shuvah, which is the Hebrew word for repentance, is very practical, really, because it has 4 stages. You cease to do the thing that you regret doing. You resolve never to do it again. That's stage 2. Stage 3 is that you, or what did I say? Number 1, cessation. Number 2, confession. Yes, confession. You say that what you did was wrong. You don't just, hope nobody noticed. You have to tell everybody I made a mistake. Don't do like what I did. The 3rd is resolution. I'm never going to do it again. Number 4, I will, which is restitution. I will try to make good any harm that I caused. I'm not denigrating anybody's ancestors, really. I have my own Eastern ancestors. I mean, we are all creatures of our environment, aren't we? But I think since we have greater access to knowledge through the internet and access to people interested in the same subject, we don't really have the same excuse for being so narrow-minded. It all hinges on simple, clear understandings of a good life, a firm life. Don't make thought too complicated. Have common sense. Well, yes, common sense is not at all common because what happens? All my life, I see problems and I see quite obvious solutions, and then you realise the obvious solution is not being implemented. And obviously I wondered why, and the solution, the answer is hidden idolatry. So let's say you mean to be good, you mean to be honest, you mean to be reasonable, and you're none of those things. But officially, you want to be thought of as honest, you want to be thought of as reasonable, and you want to be thought of as principled, but you're not. what could be your problem. And I'm saying it's basically hidden idolatry. You don't do the things you're supposed to do, or you do the things you're not supposed to do because you're being unprincipled. And whatever reason you give for being unprincipled will be irrational and irrelevant. Which means you're fundamentally neurotic. You are neurotic when you don't do the things you're supposed to do, even follow the principles you claim to have. And so it's very exasperating when I talk to Christians. I suppose, you just think, why are they so retarded? Why can't they understand the meaning of idolatry? And of course, what they're trying to do, and in a way I perfectly understand it, is to get away from having to admit that they were wrong, and that their parents were wrong, and their grandparents were wrong, and their ancestors were wrong, going all the way back to, 1700 years or so. So that is their problem. I guess nobody wants to admit that they've been wrong for so long. But the good side is that you save yourself a lot of trouble, and you shouldn't be so reluctant to admit that you've been wrong. And if you know anything about, the Christian listing of the deadly sins, you'll know that pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. And it is deadly because there's so many people who told me, I would rather die. I would rather die for my dumb opinions that I refuse to admit are wrong. I would rather sacrifice our friendship than admit that you were right. I get that all the time. So it is this lack of moral education that has caused all these problems. And it's just silly to blame Jews. It really, really is. I'm not going to deny that there's a lot of wisdom that is actually contained in Christianity when Europeans were being sensible people and being rational. But now they can't even think straight, because okay, here's an analogy. You're supposed to be worshipping the supreme God, the most powerful God conceivable. I know you're not supposed to be thinking of him as an idol, but just suppose he's this sort of super divine idol, and there he is. But over time, you get all these sort of little idols that get in the way, that you sort of put there and half forgotten about. And, and by this I mean, all the irrational and irrelevant reasons that you give yourself to not do the things that you're supposed to do, and to do the things that you're not supposed to do. And that, there's quite a lot of them, to the extent that it's obscuring your entire view of the being that you're supposed to be worshipping, which is pure reason, perfect justice, objective truth, all that sort of thing. And you don't do it anymore. You're worshipping all these pathetic little idols, such as your dumb opinions that you refuse to admit are wrong after all. And that's really the problem. And, if you're not going to admit it, then I guess we're all going to crash and burn. My possible ancestor was a Swiss Catholic chaplain who would. I'll look up the Battle of Pavia in 1525. How lovely to have ancestors going so far back that you can trace. Battle of Pavia. That would be the wars of the Reformation. And it is, well, in a way, very simple, or very, in a way, enormously complicated. Okay, it was an Italian war between France and the Habsburg Empire. Holy Roman Emperor, as well as ruler of Spain, Austria, and the countries and the two Sicilies. So, yes, it's going to be enormously complicated. I didn't learn it at school. I've never heard of it. But it established the Habsburg monarchy empire. Yes, it's very complicated. So why do you want me to watch E. Michael Jones and Charles Moskowitz? Are they talking to each other again? How nice. Okay, well, sounds fun. Charles really excelled. Jones dumbstruck. What were they discussing? Well, Calvin was the one who said it was okay for Christians to practice idolatry. And now we know that we're not supposed to do that. Well, just because the Quran says we're not supposed to do that. Oh, you're very welcome to steal secular Quranism, William Branch. He says, idolatry is reflective of false ego. Those fancy paintings of my Scottish nobility. Well, I don't think you really worship your Scottish ancestors, do you? When I talk about... If you're an idolater, it just means you don't... You're not enjoying... You have deprived yourself of the opportunity of being rightly guided by the Quran. That's what it means if you're an idolater. And actually, it's the easiest thing in the world to attribute unfortunate events in Western history to not following the Quran properly or at all. So before I go, I'll just go through what I meant by Neo-Gnosticism. So Gnosticism is basically people claiming to have specialist knowledge, which they will be prepared to put at your service for a certain fee, I suppose, for reward. And I'm saying this is corrupting, because there will be people who will claim to have this knowledge, and it doesn't even exist. But people are attracted to the idea of, I don't know, spells, magic potions, some magic book, magic, genie in a lamp, all that kind of thing. And it leaves them vulnerable to being exploited and causing harm to themselves and others. And therefore, if we use scripture, there's only two to choose from. Only the Torah and the Quran. And why would you choose the Torah when you can have the Quran, which doesn't have 36 capital offenses? So thank you all for listening. I hope what I said was reasonably clear. Neo-Gnosticism. No, that's just what I'm going to say. No to Neo-Gnosticism. NNG.